Deployment over employment. Deployment over employment. Wow. So this is a topic that I'm very, very passionate about. Extremely passionate about, and I could talk about this all day. But for the sake of the podcast, I'm gonna try and, you know, um, reduce it as much as I can. But essentially, what do I mean by this? Okay, so we already know what employment is, right? We know what employment is. It's you working for someone, you having a job. Traditionally, it's in, the 9 to 5 kind of hours, Monday to Friday. But yeah, it can vary depending on who you work for, what you do, blah, 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 blah. But the key is that we know what employment is. And we know what employment is because that's all we've been told to do. That's what we've been taught to do by our traditional education system, right? School teaches us to get good grades, to pass exams, to get a good job, to be employed. But that's about it. So we don't really need more information about employment because that's been our conditioning since we started school, right? The whole journey of school was to prepare us for employment. So we don't need more information about that in terms of how to do it and how to go about it and the mindset behind it, because that's what we know, right? But the biggest issue I have with employment, now I'm not against employment at all. I'm not against it. I'm not totally against employment. Is it something that I want for my future? Is it something that I want for myself in the long run? No. And I can get into that a little bit in this podcast, but in other podcasts as well. But the biggest issue I have with employment is that basically somebody is benefiting off your energy, in a nutshell. And I know there are plenty benefits to employment, and somebody can become extremely successful in employment. Like I said, I'm not against employment at all. But in a nutshell, what you do will always be kind of controlled and monitored by somebody else. So there's always kind of a limit to the amount of power that you have as an individual in an employment situation. Right? Your creative energies and your inputs as a person cannot fully be actualized because it will always be sort of conditioned by who you work for and the situation of employment that you're in. Right, I saw a quote once and it said basically that for most people, their creative faculties completely shut down when they accept a lifetime of earning a salary. Now that's something to ponder on. And it's very serious because in actual fact, ideas are actually what rule the world. They run the world. I mean, the world is run by creative ideas, right? The Steve Jobs of the world, the Bill Gates of the world, the Richard Bransons of the world, the people that have pushed the world forward with amazing creative ideas, have made a mark. They've made a mark, and often, not all the time, often when somebody succumbs to a life of employment, they're not allowing themselves to tap into their creative genius. Okay? And we all have it. We're just not trained enough to tap into it. But if we do tap into it, we can start to cultivate ideas that can literally change our life and benefit the world. Right? So this is where deployment comes in. Right? So where employment is you working for somebody and somebody almost benefiting from your energy, Deployment is when you're using your own energy to become productive. Right? You're tapping into your own genius, your own creative energy, your gifts, your talents that you've been given by life, and using that to become resourceful. In this, and that could come in the form of services, goods, you know, or just deploying your talents to the world. And that's where I feel when people can do this, they're playing a bigger game than the majority of other people. Right? They're tapping into their own lane, in fact, where there is no cap on their creative genius. There's no cap or control on what they do. It's all on them. They're in full control. And that's when somebody can actually experience a whole new reality that can't be experienced within employment. Okay? And that's when an individual is creating their own work. One of my favorite speakers of all time, the late great Dr. Miles Monroe, he spoke on this a lot. And he actually talked about the difference between someone's job and your work. Right? He said that someone's job is something that you're paid to do, but your work is something that you're born to do. Right? Your job is something that you can be fired from, but you can never be fired from your work, because your work is your gift and no one can ever take that from you. Right? You can never retire from your life's work, because that is you. And regardless of how old you're going to be or you'll get, that's always going to be with you. And that's always going to be able to generate, value. That's always going to be able to generate income for you, or whatever it is that you want, because it's your gift. And I feel like that's what's missing in our generation, because school doesn't teach us that. Right? School doesn't teach us to look within. School doesn't teach us to tap into our creative geniuses, generally speaking. It coaches us for employment. But deployment is where we can play a bigger game, like I said. And I truly believe that when somebody is truly in deployment, work flows through them. It's not something that they just do for an income to pay bills, but it's done with love and it's done with passion. And people can sense the energy. People can sense that it's something that they're born to do, because it's just going through them. It's flowing through them. And people's lives are being touched by what they're doing. So if you are in employment, I'm not saying quit. I'm not saying leave it, your situation. But I am saying consider and challenge yourself to give some of your energy, at least, to some deployment. Alright, don't shut down your creative genius, your creative faculties, because you have something. You have something unique that nobody else has. It sounds cliche, but I believe it with all my heart, that everybody has something to offer this world. It's been given to you, but it's up to you to find it. And all the answers are within. So if you can tap into that, if you can go within, find out what it is that you have that the world needs or what the world can benefit from, you're opening the door to deployment, and you're opening the door to a life where you're fully in control, where there is no cap on what you can, what you can create and what you can add to the world. I saw a quote once and it said that when you work on yourself and when you develop yourself, the world will then pay you to be yourself. So I might just leave it there. I hope you like this message, resonated with it, and I hope that it impacted you. Stay safe, and I'll be back with some more small talk soon. Peace.